Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who are here, I am really excited to be chatting today with Tabitha Blue of Fresh Mommy Blog and author and Oprah Magazine Insider. You've so many things that you can. It's amazing to me that you're able to accomplish. Plus, you are. Just this year, you had two babies, twins, and your book was published. So it's kind of unbelievable to me that you're able to do all of these things. Can you do just a little introduction and just kind of say who you are, where you're from, and just a little bit of background before we get into the meat of our conversation?
Sure. Yes. So again, my name is Tabitha Blue. I am from Michigan. We know it as Michigander, and now I'm a Floridian. So raising my kids with that, like I said, saltwater lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're not traveling or when I'm not, into my shameless reliance on coffee to get all the things done, I am a homebody. So I will say I kind of am enjoying this time at home. But I've always loved writing, even as a little girl. So just launching a book this year was huge. It's been something that's been a dream of mine. We've kind of one of those things where there's a couple of them, when things come, you just get it down and write it down. And so it was a big dream to happen this year. Of course, we didn't know that there would be a pandemic. So it's kind of, the whole thing of launch party and that kind of stuff is out the window. You're doing things differently, but that's part of what makes life exciting, right? Learning how to pivot, learning how to take all those things in stride and see what the next step is. But on our blog, we it started, I will say, when my oldest was born. I was looking for a way to share some of those moments with family. I think back in the day, that's pretty much how most started, right? Mm-hmm. And it just grew from there. So it was just a journey of our life with learning how to cook in the kitchen with kids. We had a series on YouTube that was born out of that called Kitchen Wise. We just all of the things. We started remodeling our home, and so a series was born out of that called House to Home. And so it just really follows all those little things that we're doing.
Yeah. And I love that because, what we're doing with this, what we're trying to do is we've been kind of, tapping into some of the members of our amazing community, like you, who have these inspiring stories, of how you kind of do it. The series is called She Speaks How She Does It. And, today, what I really want to be able to do is share with our community and our audience a little bit more about how you do what you do, because you've got so much going on in your life. And even, I guess, while you're at home quarantined, you're still an extremely busy influencer. I know that you participate you do a lot of content on your site. And what I love about what you just shared is, I think that some of the best people in terms of building an audience, influencers who are building an audience and keep that audience, as you said, you've been doing this a while when you had your first. How old is your first now?
13.
So you've been doing this a while, right? And I think one of the things that works so well, why it works so well with influencers like you, is because you're very much kind of bringing your audience through with you as you progress in life. And, you now have 6 kids. So you went from 1 to 6 while you're doing this. And, your content is just so authentic and very much surrounded around how you live your life. So I know there was a period of time where you were remodeling your home, as you said, and that became a YouTube series. So all of these things that you kind of, your audience gets to experience it with you. And I think that there's so much that you develop in terms of that relationship with your audience by virtue of doing that. So that's one of the things I think is amazing about your background. So can you talk a little bit about just, how did the idea come for the book? I mean, where did that come from? You're a very busy influencer. You've got 6 kids. I think you homeschool some of your children, right? or
Well,
you?
we did for a while, and then everyone did this year for a
Yeah,
while.
right. We all did for a while.
We did. We did for a while. They went actually at the beginning of this last year. The older kids went back to school while we had the twins, and then they ended up back at home.
Yep.
Again. Yes. So not sure quite what we're doing this fall yet, but
Yeah, well, it sounds like nobody is really sure what's going to be happening for the fall. So we're all in that same boat. But
yes.
how did the idea for the book get started? How did that happen? Tell us what the book is about, but how did it happen? And talk a little bit about the book.
Okay. Yeah, this is something I'm really excited about. Obviously, it's my first published book, but just kind of what you said, through some of that busy lifestyle and building a family, I never planned on necessarily having a large family, and we just kept growing. We wanted more. Someone had said that part of our story is some miscarriages, and I had heard someone say that, realizing the beauty of life. Like, I just want to tell every human that's walking around, you know, how many things had to line up perfectly for you to be here, just for your mom to carry you, and you're here, and what a miracle that is. So we have 6 miracles walking around now, but through all of that, I was looking for basically the resource that I ended up writing. I was looking for a book that kind of took you through all 3 trimesters, but without being overwhelming. There were so many books. A lot of them just went really deep, but I wanted something that was lighthearted, a little bit fun, but got the information in an easy to digest way. And this kind of mixes all of that in. It's a part journal, but not overwhelmingly so, where you feel like I didn't have enough to say to fill all these pages. So now I failed that, you know. So it's a little bit journal, a little bit of fun activities to keep mom relaxed and rested, but also through each trimester, what do you need to know? What's your to-do list for this trimester? What do you need to talk to your doctor about? What should you be looking for? And so really that book was born. It's called First Time Moms Pregnancy Activity Book, which is great for pregnancy, first time, second time, third time, but especially for that first time when you're not sure what to expect, because there's already so much unexpected. And that's kind of what the book was born from. Let's take you through this 3 trimesters. Let's take you through childbirth in a way that helps you relax and be calm, but gives you the information that you need to know.
Yeah, and I love that because it's, you know, there is so much to kind of know in that first time that you know, that you're expecting, and having a kind of refreshed way to be thinking about that, especially from someone who's been through it so many times, because you can almost probably be able to anticipate a lot of different options, right? It's not like you've had one child, you've had 6, and all of the different things that could come up along the way. So in terms of the book itself, I mean, how were you approached to write the book from a publisher? Like, how did that happen for you?
Yes. So for that one, yes, I was. I actually have another book in the works right now, and actually 2 more in the works right now. There's one that I've been working on for a while. And as I was working on one, kind of with this idea, I was approached by a publisher for something to do with pregnancy. And it just kind of came at the right time, in the right season for me. I was also in the middle of pregnancy with twins. So it was a whole new experience that I haven't experienced before. And it just kind of came in that wave and that timing. And it felt like the right time to jump into it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's obviously something that you, I'm sure, can write about with such good authority, but also given your experience writing on your blog, and, you know, you write, as you said, you write a lot, you know, having that, I'm sure, helps a lot, because your blog is almost like a story, right? It's like your life story kind of unfolding. And so talk a little bit, let's take a step back and talk about the blog. I know you said you wanted to share with other people your experience, but how did you, like this, you started blogging 13 years ago, you said, right? Your oldest is 13. Back then, how did you come up with this idea that, you know what, I think I should start a blog and put that out there and have, you know, my own website? Like, how did that happen? And did you have the, I guess, the courage to kind of launch that and to start that.
Yeah. I think with so many things, so I'll tell like a couple stories a little bit at the same time, but just the courage to launch something, I think there's so much that can hold us back when we kind of go through letting the fear hold us back. I think sometimes fear is a good thing in the sense of, you know, I'll just put this out there. If you're not having a little bit of fear of the unknown in your life, then I think that you need to make some bigger goals, you know, because the confidence to do something really comes from doing it.
Yeah.
Right? And I see that so much, obviously, an easy analogy is with walking, because my little babies are starting to crawl right now and they're climbing up on stuff and they're not quite sure yet. They don't have the confidence in it, but as they keep doing it. And so that is what takes us past the fear, because we have the courage to take those little steps. So for the blog, the kind of funny story is, I guess my mom is the one who really, I guess, approached me with it and was like, hey, you like writing? And there's this new thing out there I'm seeing called blogs, and it's people writing and they put it out there, and, you know, maybe we should start one. And I think,
wow.
You know, she was like, you know, you start one and I'll start one. Let's do it. And I don't know if she was doing that just to get me to do it, because she still hasn't started a blog. Or never did. But really, it's thanks to my mom to say, hey, maybe you should just, you know, write some of your stories and put them there and let it go from there. And really, that's the catalyst that started it. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I just kind of found that was back when Blogspot was big, and found a thing. And what should I name it? Fresh Mommy Blog went in there. And then it was more just because I wanted us to treat every day like a fresh start. You know, moms especially, we feel the guilt. So at the end of the day, we'd feel guilty about this or that. And it was like, okay, tomorrow's a fresh new day. It's a fresh start. So that's where fresh came from. And it just kind of took off from there. And it just was, it's funny to look back now. It might've been a photo and a couple of sentences or, you know, but it was just that. It was just kind of taking those thoughts from that day or whatever was happening in our life right then, or a funny story, and putting it on there.
Yeah, and you just, you know, one of the things I did not say, because your bio, you have so many things that, you know, you're so many facets to who you are and what you do. One of the things I did not mention is that you're a life coach. And so, you know, I think it would be, you know, it's a really interesting area, and one that, you know, we actually recently on Facebook Live interviewed a life coach for our community, because we were finding that, especially as people were a lot of people were in quarantine and not able to be out and about the way that we have been. A lot of us were feeling kind of stuck. The community members, our community, or She Speaks members, were telling us that they wanted to start something, they wanted to change something, but they just couldn't find that motivation. Can you talk a little bit about how you find motivation, and, you know, anything that you think could be helpful for people kind of tuned in about how they might be able to find motivation to accomplish something that they that they would like to accomplish?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. Those dreams is a big one. Like I mentioned, if you're not feeling, and I don't mean fear in the sense of I'm scared, but just that kind of, this is a big thing, then it's a great time right now to kind of take stock of your goals or what your dreams are or passions are, and just relook at them and allow yourself to maybe just sit and think and dream a little bit, and then grab onto some of those dreams. And I think staying motivated is keeping that in front of you. When you're passionate about something, when you have a goal in front of you or a big dream in front of you, it's easy to get motivated to do it. And I'm not saying every day is a motivated day, because we all have those where you just need to unplug and put it all away and just be with your family. We have a lot of those right now. Being just keeping everyone fed and happy, but having those goals in front of you. Something that I like to do is vision boards, because of that, because it helps to keep that goal or that dream, you know, in front of your face. And as you walk by, you see it, and it's kind of this subliminal reminder of, don't forget about this thing here. And it helps keep you motivated to at least take steps. Sometimes it just comes down to breaking it into little steps. If it is writing a book, then maybe researching who some agents are or publishers are that you want to reach out to. Mm-hmm. Breaking things down into like those small manageable steps, but keeping that big dream or big goal in front of you is what motivates you to take those steps.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I was going to ask you if you do vision boarding, especially, I've talked to a lot of amazing women who, have accomplished things like, maybe writing a book or, maybe launching a company or doing something. And a lot of them talk about vision boarding. Can you talk a little bit about how, what vision boarding is for you and maybe even some tips about how somebody might do it if they are looking to do it and why you think it's helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so have you ever had a moment where you're trying to think of something, maybe someone's name or an actor from a movie, and in the moment you can't think of it, but randomly later you're driving or you're in the shower and it's like, oh, that's who that was, or why didn't I think of that before? Well, what's happening is your mind is set up to problem solve for you. So even though you weren't with a conscious part of your brain the whole time thinking about who is this person, what's this name, there was a part of your mind, of your brain, that was still trying to solve that problem for you. And so with a vision board, it's not necessarily a magical thing where you just put a picture on a board and then bippity boppity boo, it happens. But what it is it's putting something in front of your mind so that your brain can, even when you're driving or feeding your kids or taking a shower or doing whatever it is you do, start to problem solve for you, start to come up with ideas, start to find ways to make that happen, because it's kind of a problem that you've put in front of it to solve. And that's the beauty of how they work. So for mine, I have it right over in my closet. So whenever I go in my closet to get dressed, I have it. And even before this year, so mine from last year, and I left it up there, I had photos of like a row of books, Amazon bookstore, Target bookstore, all of these things. And I didn't have this book, or at least not finished. I didn't have a publisher. I didn't have any of that, but it was just, okay, this is time. It's time. And so I feel like when you start to put those pictures on a board, it's kind of almost the accountability with yourself to go ahead and take those steps. Almost like that motivation, like we talked about, to help you get there. And so tips would be, grab a stack of magazines probably right now while you're at home. If you haven't cleaned them out yet, because we're all cleaning out all the things while we're at home, go through them. When I have workshops for vision boarding, we have stacks and stacks of magazines, and everyone just flip through them first quickly and just rip out whatever pages. For some reason, you might not be able to explain it yet, you're drawn to it. Maybe it's a location or a word, a photo of something that you're drawn to, and just start cutting them out and making a stack. And then the next phase is you kind of go back through that stack and see, okay, why, like looking at it again, am I still drawn to it? Why? Maybe I can put a reason for it. Maybe I've been dreaming about a house and it's a beautiful house. Maybe we've been dreaming about a trip and it's a place we want to go. Maybe it's a book, whatever it is. Maybe it's just empowered, and for some reason that word that you saw meant a lot. And so you kind of reduce that stack down to some things that really speak to your goals or your dreams, and then paste them on a board. And that's really the best way to get started.
So it's interesting. So it sounds like sometimes we don't know what we even want yet. It's just you're looking through, and for these vision boards, you're looking through and kind of taking something out that is interesting to you or that sparks something within you. So you may not know exactly what it is yet that you want to accomplish, but by virtue of going through this process, you are able to help make that picture almost come to life for yourself.
Yeah.
You always have to know going into it, no, I want to write a book. I know I want to write a book. Or I guess I want to make sure I understand, does it only work if you know going into it what you really want to do? Or can it be a little bit more amorphous than that.
Exactly. I think it's a good mix of both. I think if you're a person that, I want to be a speaker, I want to speak to people from a stage, I have a heart to share this, and there's something specific that you have a dream, then go online and Google or find a photo that represents that to you, a person on a stage or something like that. And that should go on a vision board, because that's a defined dream that you already have. So that's a great place to start from that facet. But I also think there's something to be said of, sometimes we have things in us that we don't really, it's hard to put a full word around or a pin on until we dive into it a little bit. And so I think a vision board is a good one, is a mix of both of those. Sometimes, and sometimes you don't even know necessarily, like maybe you were drawn to different things, a photo that just had a flowy dress, you don't know what it means. And then eventually later something comes up in your life and you realize this really speaks to me in that way, comes about in a way that you realize that was kind of what I was going for. Maybe it was or going with the flow. And now I've learned how to, so I think there's a little bit of both that can go into it.
Yeah. And I think there's something about the idea of putting it out there and putting it down and saying, this is what I want, that I want to try to achieve this. And just by virtue of putting it out there, it almost becomes something that you can work towards, as opposed to just kind of an idea maybe that's in your mind. And not that it can't work, but there is something about, I think, putting it out there, whether you're saying it to a friend or to a spouse or putting a vision board together. There's something about saying, I really want to accomplish this. This is something I want to do. This is something I want to change. So, well, thank you for sharing a little bit about that. I know that is something that, that a lot of women have been talking about lately and for a while, and understanding the value of that, I think is really useful. So can you talk a little bit about just kind of what does success mean to you in your own life? What does that mean? How do you kind of think about it? And maybe even talk about, when you haven't had success, when you've had some failures. So I know that's sort of two parts, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yep, definitely. Winston Churchill said it, and I like how he said it. He said, success is not final and failure is not fatal. And I think if we keep kind of both of those things in mind, I think for me, the definition of success kind of changes sometimes daily. What I like to do for like breaking down a successful day is starting out the day with one big goal, because I'm a list person. I like making lists. And then if I get to the end of the day and I'm like, oh, I didn't get to all of this stuff, I could feel like for that day, I didn't do anything, even though there's a lot crossed off. So I like to have one big goal for the day, and then everything else is kind of a cherry on top, especially with our very big, loud, crazy days with 6 kids at home. But overall, success for me personally is being able to show up in work, in life, and taking care of my family, and be able to just be there, to show up for the things that matter to me. And I think that's where it comes down different to everyone. But a lot of times I like to call it multi-passionate, and we can get so many things going that it's hard to show up or be present for the thing that you're physically present for. And so being able to show up for my family, be there for them, being able to show up in my business that we're building with Fresh Mommy Blog and the different things, the books and the things that we're doing. I think that's a successful day, a successful life. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love the, that idea of, being mindful about your day. You talked about how you create one big goal for the day, like you'll say, and that big goal, it might not seem huge, like if you were just telling somebody else about it, but the idea of being mindful and maybe even saying to yourself, okay, what do I want to accomplish today? And having that in your mind so that you go about your day in a more purposeful approach. So And talk a bit about failure, because I love that Winston Churchill quote that you just mentioned. I mean, I don't think I've heard that, and it's a great one. So there's the success part of that, and then there's the failure part of that. And I feel like a lot of successful business people, entrepreneurs, other people I've heard, one of the things they talk a lot about is being comfortable, and not only comfortable, but almost embracing failure. So we're all going to fail at something at some point. And I've heard people talk about how the fact that they fail more than they succeed, right. But there's so much value to failing in terms of what it teaches you, and also what you can go do from there. So talk a little bit about failure for you, what that means, and how it's maybe helped you in your life.
Yeah, there's a lot of that too. People talking about failure, maybe in an area that they thought was something they wanted to pursue, but it opened a door into something else and realized this is where I'm supposed to be. And I also heard one person talk about it this way. It really changes our perspective on how we see it. And so seeing a failure and calling it a failure, taking a step back and just calling it an expensive lesson. Because I think it's a great way to see, like, I can grow and come out of this. And I've had quite a few of those. I think one of the things that we kind of dabble in, or I mentioned before, one of our series called House to Home was really about DIY. Goodness, I was 18 when I bought my first house to remodel.
Wow.
And bought the house, remodeled it. Now, I wasn't so DIY then, but planned it all out, did it that way. And the economy was kind of changing. So instead of selling, decided to rent it out for a while. And my husband and I were first married. It was one of our first holidays together. And we had a call on Christmas Day from the neighbor of that house that the house was engulfed in flames. And it was,
oh my God.
Merry Christmas, right? So we went through that whole process of like feeling like a failure this was one of our first kind of investment properties, and dipping our toes into that, something that we really liked doing. And now what do we do? And how do we, and, starting to see, obviously, from hindsight, things we could have done and changed and done differently, and kind of that feeling of losing control. And I think the biggest lesson with not necessarily failures, but those expensive life lessons, is realizing that we can't control everything. But it's okay to find the areas and the ways and the times that we can kind of pivot and make shifts and make changes, and being able to let go of that control. It doesn't necessarily mean everything is going to look like a big success. Obviously, we lost money on that one, time, all of that. I was pregnant with our first at that time. And we ended up fixing it up again. The day that I went into the hospital to have our first was the day that we had the permits and everything all wrapped up on that house. So it's just a really kind of crazy story, but one that started our journey into something we love to do now, and really helped launch. I mean, not really launch House to Home then, but looking back, we learned so much and grew so much from that could look like a spot or a failure. Right. Realizing that I'm so grateful for that experience and all the things we learned out of it. Maybe not at the time, but now.
Great. Well, I love that. And by the way, I did notice there was this question that popped up onto the screen, so I do want to ask that question. The question is, what tools or websites are there to help provide inspirations or ideas? Something like a personality profile that pinpoints your passion and matches it to business ideas. Is that something that you have some perspective on in terms of where people might be able to, like, some tools people can use
for that? To be completely honest, I don't know offhand of one that matches your passion with a business idea. I think
Well, there's an idea for somebody.
right. I think that is a fantastic idea. And it may be out there, but if not, that's a great one for someone to jump on, because I think that that would be an amazing idea. I do think it's really important to, there are a lot of different personality profile like ways to check that, you know, with your Enneagram number, but even just different ways to dive into personalities. And I think that's really important for the success of any brand or business, for one, to know your own personality, what some of your strengths are, and some other areas that you can address within your own personality and how you work. Knowing how you work is important, because it can help move you past when you're kind of stalling or waiting on something. Is this needed, or do I need to push myself forward? That kind of a thing. And it also helps you when you're interacting with other people. So I do think that's an important part for any business, building your brand.
Yeah, and I know that there was a book many years ago that's been updated many times. I think it's called "What Color Is Your Parachute?" or "What Color Is My Parachute?" Something like that. It's, if you Google that, I know that in a lot of I've heard a lot of people recommend that in terms of I guess they've updated that several times through different editions, and apparently it's a decent way to kind of start tapping into understanding a little bit more about yourself, because as you just pointed out, Tabitha, one of the things that I think is so important with any of these things that we're going to start to do is understand more about ourselves and you know, what motivates us, why we, you know, are doing kind of the things we are, because that helps an enormous amount with then determining, okay, what should I be doing? What should my new project be? What should my business, if I'm starting a business, what should that be? So that hopefully.
Am I the type that procrastinates because I want everything perfect first? Okay, then I need to give myself a deadline and know that if I don't think it's perfect, I've spent enough time on it. The next, or am I the type that just bulldozes through something? So I need to take a step back and make sure I have everything lined up first. So understanding that about yourself is, I think, really important.
Yeah. All right. We have another question. How do you balance focusing on any one project with making sure everything you're doing is on track? Do you tend to multitask or single task?
Okay. This is a good question. I am the type that tends to try and multitask, but I'll say try with, I guess, air quotes, because there really is no such thing as true multitasking. Your mind, what you're consciously thinking about, is pretty one-tracked. So, for example, if I'm having a conversation with you and someone else comes in the room and I start to talk or engage with them, I might hear your voice, but I'm not fully listening or understanding what you're saying at that time. So it kind of sidetracks. So as far as like working on projects, a successful way to work is to single task. Time blocking is great, and say, I'm going to focus on this one thing, even for a short amount of time. If I focus on one thing for 10 minutes, block out other distractions, I can get so much more accomplished because I'm truly focused on that than trying to multitask with other things, even though I still try.
Right. Right.
But I do also I would love to say something to that word balance, because that's another thing that I'm learning. Is for me, I think balance is a real fluid word, and kind of like that focus or multitask versus single task. Balance, I feel, is the same way. It's fluid. It shifts based on what season of life we're in, what part of the day we're in. For example, I have a lot of young kids, so I do have a lot of focus on them and on family and on what we're doing, even though I'm building other things. But it also isn't a season of life for me to really be able to balance that with a lot of other things. There are things that I won't focus on right now just because I'm in a season of life with little ones.
Yeah.
And even same for day to day. I guess in a sense, balance, we have to get rid of the notion that it's balancing everything equally. Because that's not what it is. It's what am I prioritizing right now, being okay with that being balanced in my life. So even day to day, I have some moments in my day where I prioritize work or writing or answering emails and let someone else, my husband or my mom, help with the family.
Yeah.
And then there's times where I shut all that down and my priority is on my family or my kids or cooking dinner. And that's how we find balance.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have thought a lot about that. I've been asked before, how do you do the work-life balance? How do you do that? Especially, if you run a business, as an entrepreneur, you're always thinking about what is going. It's so blurred in terms of everything else because your business also almost becomes like part of your family, right? I mean, I don't necessarily think of my business as a child, but I do think of it as part of my family. And I think of it as like sort of your share of mind. You have only a certain amount of capacity in terms of what you're going to focus on, what you're going to think about, what you're going to worry about. And I like to think about, well, how much energy am I going to give to these different things going on in my life? And that's, to me, it's more about share of mind. I know that maybe is not like a way that is, is that common to think about the balance idea. But for me, it's, and in any given time that could change, right? I could decide right now, my share of mind is X% on this and X% on that, so that, you can actually, make progress across many different things that are of interest to you in your life, right? So I think that's really good advice. We have another question here. Do you believe in Enneagram? And if so, how have you used that knowledge in your life? Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, the Enneagram, I believe, is how it's pronounced. Yes, absolutely. What
is it first?
Kind of like a personality profiling, I guess, if you would.
Got it.
It's kind of deep diving into what makes you tick, what makes you feel motivated, what doesn't, kind of how you act and react to all of the things in your life, the experiences, the outside influences in your life, and basically that. It's how you kind of physically or at your core react to those things. So I definitely think knowing how your mind functions, how you react is really important. Whether it's with Enneagram, which I think is a very good way to do it because it has so much info. It can almost be overwhelming. So if you haven't really done that, looking into your personality before, it's a great one, but don't take your time going through it. But really at least finding a way to see what is my personality, what are the ways that I react to the things happening around me is really important, because it also sets the tone for things that none of us were necessarily prepared for this year with a global pandemic and so much working from home and kids schooling from home and all these changes. Everyone takes those things on in different ways. People deal with change in different ways, deal with, your schedule being thrown off in different ways. So really seeing, what do I need? Do I need to pull away and have that time for myself? What do I need to find to help refresh me? And knowing that about yourself really helps with dealing with all the different things that come up in our life, the things that we don't prepare for.
Okay, I love that. Well, thank you. I mean, I know we have gone on for a bit of time, but I really so appreciate your insights. And if people want to be able to want to find you, where can people find you?
On social media, most of it is just my name, @Tabitha Blue. I would love to connect with you there. And of course, my website is freshmommyblog.com. And I'm always looking for new friends to connect with. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tabitha. I really appreciate you spending time with us today and sharing your insights. Love your what you do, and you're so inspiring. So thanks for taking the time, and we appreciate everyone for stopping in and listening in on us. So have a great day. Thank you.